Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany. If you're new here, welcome. And if you like deep dives into weird stuff, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Okay, so we're in a little bit of a different location because it is raining and I can't film in front of my window today. So we're using some artificial lighting. Oh, I hope it's not too echoey in here. Ooh, hold on. If it's echoey, I apologize. We just gotta move on and get into this video. So if you watched any of my videos before, you might know that we were doing true crime light, L-I-T-E, true crime light. It's just like, it's a true crime story, no one gets murdered or anything. It's a fun little walk. Imagine that being like a little boat slowly moving down the river and you're looking at pretty little wildflowers or whatever. Clearly I don't go on boats a lot, okay? Today, you're getting on a carnival ride, okay? You're getting on something that got zoomed down the highway at 70 miles per hour and put up overnight, and you're getting on it. This is a lot weirder, okay? So just strap in. Today we're gonna be talking about a television show called The Push, which asks really just one question. Could you be manipulated into killing someone? Let's take a look at the trailer.
Okay, here we go.
Why is it wrong?
I want to talk to the auctioneer.
You did talk to the auctioneer and you helped him set these prices.
It's completed. It's just the...
Benny? Pills. Chris, what? Chris, I'll call an ambulance, find the pills and bring them back.
Chris is enmeshed in a web of lies. And that's important. I need him to feel like there's only one way out when he's told to commit murder. My name is Derren Brown, and the question we're considering is simple. Can we be manipulated through social pressure to commit murder?
70 people coming in here. They can't see this. Take them by the knees.
70 actors will be playing out a meticulously planned and rehearsed scenario to manipulate this man, who has no idea he's being filmed.
Come on, guys, what are we gonna do?
He's a millionaire. He's going to make sure you go to jail.
This show is about how readily we hand over authorship of our lives every day.
Just give him one big push.
Can social compliance be used to make someone push a living, breathing human being to their death? Welcome to The Push.
Okay, so as we can see from the trailer, it basically says it's a social experiment that tests if just regular, normal people could be manipulated into committing murder. And the reason it's called Push is because the whole idea is that at the end of this whole elaborate manipulation thing, you or whoever the subject would be would actually like push someone physically off of a building in one night. So you go from being just doing your job, right? Going to work, basically, to pushing someone off a building. So could it happen? So Derren Brown, who's a mentalist and a magician, describes this project as him engineering an audacious social experiment demonstrating how manipulation can lead any ordinary person to commit an appalling act. It kind of goes into these psychological concepts, like as people, could we be manipulated, or can we use our own brains and biology against us, essentially? So we are, you know, the 90-second trailer, it shows a man named Chris. He's surrounded by about 70 actors that are putting on this elaborate show, and they are really all there for one reason: to see if they can get him to commit murder through something called social compliance. So before we talk about this show, we really have to deep dive into what is social compliance. Now, I have to say, as someone who has studied sociology and psychology as an undergrad, I would just like a moment of silence to recognize that I'm using that degree right now. It's only been 10 years. I mean, I'm not one of those people who's salty about my degree. I was happy to go to college. Those student loans are another story. But it just feels really good to be like, oh, I've heard this before. So social compliance is more commonly known just as regular compliance. It's a type of social influence where an individual does what someone else wants them to do at the other person's request or suggestion. It's important to note, for this to be true compliance, the individual has to have the option to make a decision to do something or not do something. So it would be social compliance if I said, hey, can I have $1? It would not be social compliance if I said, hey, can I have $1? And I was like holding a gun to your head. That's not social compliance. You don't have a choice. So social compliance is just, it's regular, everyday stuff. We deal with it all the time. Coming in contact with a salesperson at a store, you know, hey, can I ask you a question? Those flat iron people, remember those? A friend just simply asking for a favor. All these things can be related to social compliance. It's really just a request, and then how you react to the situation. If you do it, it's compliance. So there's many techniques for social compliance. One that's really common, and I think it's the one we need to talk about for the push in terms of this show, it's called the foot in the door technique. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's doing something small so you can get to something bigger. So essentially, can I request something small from you and then request a larger something and a larger something? An example of this was, imagine a friend said, hey, you know, I wanted to bake a cake this weekend. I really need a ride to the store just to pick up a couple things. You're like, yeah, no problem, no big deal. Now imagine the friend then asks you to make the cake. Now, this is important because a ride is a fairly small favor, you know, could take 10 minutes, maybe could even take 30 minutes, but making a cake is a much larger endeavor. It takes a significant amount more time and effort from you. But most people, even if they didn't want to, would say yes to the second question because of the foot in the door technique. And it plays into this psychological concept called consistency. We like to be consistent and we do not like to contradict ourselves. This is really interesting. If I say yes to do you a favor, like giving you a ride, and I'm like, it's no big deal, and I truly mean that. I truly mean in my heart of hearts, it's not a big deal, I wanna give you a ride. And then you ask me if I can help you make a cake. And in my mind, I'm like, that is actually a problem. I've got stuff to do today, I can't. I go back to the fact that, I don't know, that just doesn't fit with the narrative I placed in front of this person, that it was no big deal for me to take them to the store. So I feel like I have this weird tug, this weird pull to help you do the larger favor. And that is the principle of consistency. We all have this. I mean, some of us are more susceptible than others, but it's really, really common for us to feel like we need to remain consistent in these kinds of things. As a side note, I think this is a much bigger issue about people not being able to set clear and consistent boundaries and still feeling like they have autonomy over their life and their decisions, but that's a different video, okay? I'm working on it too. This isn't just something that, you know, people are like, yeah, I don't know, like that's probably a thing. There was a study done in 1966 and 156 women were called. There's 4 groups of women. The scientists called 3 groups the first time and they said, hey, can you tell us what kind of products you use? The second time they made a call, they called all 4 groups of women and they said, can we send someone to your house to catalog all your products? Basically, can we send someone to rifle through your shit? How many people do you think said yes? I don't know. If I was just guessing, if someone called me and said, hey, what kind of products do you use in 2021, I would hang up on them. But maybe in 1966, it's a different vibe. But I would guess that at highest, maybe 20% were nice enough to like let them come over to their house. Get this, out of the people who were called the first time, out of the people who complied and told them, hey, here's the kinds of products I use. What's going on with my fingers? Why are they so weird right now? Oh my God, sorry. Anyways, out of the 3 groups of women that were called the first time, 58% of those women allowed them to send someone to their house and rifle through their and catalog their stuff. Now, how many do you think out of the first group who were never called initially to find out the products, the only call they got was, hey, can we send someone to your house to look at your stuff? It was 22%. 22% people said yes. So truly, the foot in the door technique works. People like to remain consistent. They're like, yeah, I already said I would tell you what it was, but coming to your house, talk about a much bigger burden. So that's really important because the way you react to these kinds of questions, it kind of consistently and continuously gives you feedback about yourself and it changes your self image, the answers you say to this. This is super common too in the world of marketing, sales, and even politics. And from what I can tell, it's the basis of this show, this foot in the door technique. You know, getting people to kind of believe something about themselves or believe that they're a certain type of person makes them more susceptible to say yes to things, and that could be including favors, to buy something, to vote for something. This is really important to know. So Derren Brown wants to see if this idea of social compliance that's already been proven scientifically. I just talked about one of the more, I would say, mild experiments. There's a lot more. Can he take this experiment to the extreme and see if he can get just my regular dude to push someone off of a building? So first, Brown needed to make sure that everyone he brought into this social experiment was a good participant in the social compliance game. And that means he needed to see how susceptible people were to comply, because everything is a spectrum, you guys. Psychology, sociology, they're really great at giving you a very broad idea of how most people will react, but there are always people who are outside of that norm or have been exposed to certain situations, so they don't go along with certain compliance techniques no matter what. And so he did this experiment, which is actually pretty interesting. So it's a pretty common social experiment, something of this effect, but let me explain it to you. So it starts off that we have 3 actors in a room. The actors are all sitting down filling out fake paperwork. They are instructed to, every time they hear this bell ring, they will stand up, and every time they hear the bell ring, they'll sit down. Every time they hear it once, they stand up. If they hear it again, they'll sit down. Now, they're actors, they know what they're doing. They're not actually filling out paperwork for the show, but to everyone else, it looks like they are. Now, the producers start bringing in actual applicants for the show. So these are people who would like to be on the show. They're auditioning. And they are now, there's one person in the room with the 3 actors, the bell rings, and then all 3 actors stand up. The test is, does this other person who came in stand up? Even though they've been given no instruction to stand up, they haven't been told anything about the bell. Every single person who stands up gets to stay. Anyone who stays seated and continues to fill out their paperwork is taken off the set, because we're seeing right from the jump, they're not very receptive to doing things without an explanation or understanding why. They don't know why these other people are standing, but they know that that doesn't have anything to do with them, so they're not gonna stand. They're more questioning the situation, whereas everyone else is probably assuming that they missed a part of the assignment or something, or someone forgot to tell them something, so they're standing and sitting with the bell. By the end of the experiment, all you have in the room are actual people who are auditioning. They've removed all the actors, so everyone is standing and sitting every time they hear the bell. It's actually really interesting and a really cool way to kind of explore social compliance. Just to kind of deeper dive into this idea why people would stand or sit if no one told them to do that, and they were just told to fill out paperwork, especially after the actors are gone. It's because we have, as a general population, a psychological need to belong. We will most likely take actions to gain the approval or build relationships of the in crowd or the people around us, our peers. Most of the time, compliance has nothing to do with personal beliefs. It's really subconsciously motivated. So I don't want us to go through this and be like, yeah, everyone is just stupid. No one is stupid. It's just like very interesting how we're wired to kind of really at a very kind of visceral level protect ourselves. So we want to be in the in crowd, we want to build relationships, we want to have allies. But now Brown has this group of people who have shown that they are susceptible to this idea of social compliance. And so he can use that as his pool of potential applicants to be on this show. Now, from what I understand, the people who were auditioning for his show didn't know anything about the push concept of the show. I guess he has some other TV show. I think it's a British TV show. I guess he has some other show out there. So they thought they were applying for that. So getting to the end of this, everyone was told that they were not selected for this other TV show. But it turns out months and months later, they actually had selected at least one guy, and his name was Chris. Now, Chris wasn't told that he was going to be on this TV show. He was just selected based on the results of his social compliance test. And months later, Brown actually makes up this whole fake charity called Push. There's a lot of subliminal messaging throughout this whole TV show for Chris. But anyway, so Chris is called because he's told by his job that they are just landing a contract with this nonprofit organization called Push, and it serves underprivileged youth, which I think there's probably a whole nother psychological connection to nonprofits, like doing something for the greater good, but that's a different video. So he's told, I think he works in IT, that his company is potentially getting this contract to make an app for this nonprofit called Push. And so part of it, he needs to go and attend this fundraising gala that's happening to get a better idea of the organization. So anyways, when he gets to the gala, there's like hundreds and hundreds of hidden cameras around, and we find out that Chris is the only person who doesn't know what's going on. There's about 70 other actors playing out this whole elaborate thing. The end goal is to find out if Chris will push someone off of a building. In one night, it's one night of a gala. So Chris gets to this event and he is taken through this whole night. He kind of has a main friend or connection. His name is Tom. Tom, as far as I can tell, is like the organizer or the president of Push, the organization, and he is connected with Chris the whole night. So we've got Tom, he's like his main connection through the night. He's also an actor. Chris is the subject of the experiment, and Derren Brown is watching from like the super spy cave, you know, talking in everyone's ear to get Chris to do these certain things. The first step that we see that shows us the foot in the door technique is that Chris comes to the gala and he's immediately ushered in the back room in the kitchen. Tom is putting together a tray of appetizers, sausage rolls, which I don't know if I was at an event if I would want a sausage roll. Like, I don't know. Give me a little wonton. Give me some spanakopita, you know what I mean? But anyways, whatever. It's not my event. It's not even a real event. Side note. Okay. So Tom is putting together these little sausage rolls, and there's a bunch of little vegetarian flags, and so he takes a bunch of the sausage rolls off of this main dish, puts them on a second dish so that there's like 2 dishes, and he says, "Hey Chris, will you help me with this?" And he obviously is putting these vegetarian flags into the very obviously not vegetarian sausage rolls. Basically kind of like telling Chris no harm, no foul. Like, we do what we have to do because the most important thing is we get this money. We need to get this money. Okay, right. Anyway, sorry. For the organization for the underserved kids. And so we see Chris start off with this very small thing and putting these little flags in here. Now, there's a couple of reasons why someone might do this. One, this is really not Chris's job. He really has nothing to do with the catering. He's just supposed to be watching the event. He kind of got roped into this. 2, you know, he's not a caterer or whatnot. Like, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why someone might do this. And 3, he just probably doesn't want to rock the boat. He's trying to get this contract for his job. He's supposed to come in here and do one thing. Now, as someone who was a vegetarian for like 8 years, that would f my stomach up, okay? They would know. But another part of it is they have Chris carry out the vegetarian sausage rolls. So now he really seems responsible for these, even though he's not. But we see him partake in this first test of social compliance. One of the big things that's going on is that there's a huge benefactor coming tonight. He's gonna give like a $5 million gift. I believe his name is Bernie. And there's a couple of key things that we need to know about Bernie. One, he's extremely wealthy and successful, and the fate of the organization sits on him completing this gift. So he needs to make this $5 million gift, or this organization is, and those kids are, I'm sorry, why did I do that? Am I 12? He's also super private, so barely anyone knows what Bernie looks like. That's also very important. As we start, you know, the event, this is like the pre-cocktail hour before the event really gets started. There's a bunch of people walking around. And one thing they have done is they have not told Chris that it's a black tie event. So he comes business cash. That is an interesting way to put Chris in a vulnerable state. You guys know how it is if you go somewhere and you're not dressed appropriately. You know, it just feels bad, you feel on the spot, and that kind of signals our brain that we need to do extra to not be on the spot, if that makes sense. So he's already put in this like vulnerable situation and he really wants to kind of fit in. They did that on purpose. So the benefactor, Bernie, comes in, he meets Chris and Tom, he's saying hello, and then he grabs one of the vegetarian sausage rolls off of Chris's tray that he's carrying around for some reason, even though he ain't a damn caterer, eats it while he's talking about, you know, business stuff or whatever. And Tom looks at Chris and kind of gives him a nod. So now they're kind of in cahoots, you know, they've already partaken on their first step of deceit, so they're bonded in that, and that was, according to Brown, a really important part of how this rest of this night was going to play out. There are some other smaller compliance tests that we see them test Chris on, like one asking Chris to like carry the benefactor's jacket and bring it to and fro places, even though that's also not his job. There's just a lot of little things that they made Chris do at the beginning that, from my perspective, as someone who just is like, I just like to be helpful, I could imagine him doing that to be helpful. Brown describes this as ways, you know, to start opening you up to more and more of these social compliance things. Now, I don't want to get into all of the social compliance tests of the series because I think you might want to watch it. The show is about an hour, but I will tell you, so there's about to be a little bit, there's going to be some spoilers in here. So just as an FYI, if you're done, if you don't want to know, stop watching now. But I'm not going to tell you all of the tests that they put Chris through, but I do want to hit on the big ones. So the first thing is there is a catalyst to see, you know, we got to go from making people think, oh, sausage roll is vegetarian, to murder. So we need to start upping the ante at every stage. So what happens is Bernie actually suffers what seems to be a fatal heart attack. He is giving his speech, testing it out. Something happens. He starts acting really weird. He comes out into the room. So it's Tom, Chris, and Bernie in the room. Bernie grabs his chest, passes out, and then Tom pretends, you know, to try and revive him because both of them are actors, asks Chris to run back to this office and grab Bernie's jacket and briefcase to try and see if there's medicine or something in there for him. We don't find this out right away, but in the time that Chris is in the back office trying to get these items, actor Bernie helps Tom pull out this super lifelike dummy that they got made at an official like studio that does this for a living. And when I tell you, it is so real and creepy, it is so real. They basically took a full body cast of this actor Bernie playing Bernie and just made him look like a real whole ass human, and they dragged that body out into the floor. So that way when Chris comes back out with the jacket and whatnot, whatever happens to mannequin Bernie, we know is just like, it's not the real Bernie, because no one could be put through the next couple of things that's about to go down without accidentally coughing or letting their chest rise and fall. So as Chris comes out with the jacket, Tom tells him, you know, oh my God, he's dead. And Chris is like, oh shit, like this really took a turn, you know, this night. Tom tells him, you know, we have to have this event. Like 200 people are about to be in here in 10 seconds and they cannot see this, because if they see this and we have to cancel the event, that's it. And I won't have the money and we won't be able to help the kids. And please, can you just help me move him to the office? So this is a much bigger ask. Ooh, sorry y'all, I thought there was a spider on my blinds. Oh my gosh. Ugh. Anyway, so this is a much bigger ask than what we were talking about before. That was just sausage rolls and grabbing coats. That was child's play. Now we're talking about moving what Chris thinks is a dead body back into the office. Tom is like, you know, we can just tell people that he had a heart attack back here, and that way we can still have the event and it'll be fine and we'll still be able to help the kids. Chris is obviously like not into it, but he's like, okay, you know, just moving the body so that the people can come in. He complies. He helps him move mannequin Bernie to the back room. But of course, it feels like a very real body and Chris thinks it's a real body. So I really want to emphasize the fact that everything that's happening, Chris thinks is real. Okay, that's important. He thinks it's real. So Chris helps Tom move the body into the office. After they move the body into the office, something else comes up, and now they've asked Tom has asked Chris to help him move the body into a trunk in the office. Now, remember when I said no one really knew what Bernie looked like? During all of this high stress stuff going on, the auctioneer, or the person who calls out all of the auction things, he shows up and he mistakenly thinks Chris is Bernie. He says hello, whatever. And at one point, Chris actually gives the speech that Bernie was going to give because everyone has mistaken him for Bernie. So at every stage over this next, like, I think hour from when, you know, mannequin Bernie passes out and dies to, you know, what happens at the very end of the night and to him giving this speech, it could only have been like at most an hour. So things have escalated so freaking quickly for Chris, and he's in a very heightened state of stress. There are some other things that go on. Basically, they're moving this body all around town, and there are some pretty awful things that Tom has asked Chris to participate in. And I want you to watch the TV show so you can see the progression of it. But I just want to make sure that you guys know it wasn't just like jumping from like carry his coat to push him off a building. A lot of stuff happened, and they really tried to push Chris into a corner to make him think the only thing that he could do would be to murder Bernie. So how does this happen? Well, it turns out that Bernie's wife, who's also an actor, shows up and says that, you know, just like off the fly, like, oh, you know, Bernie's probably outside smoking a cigarette or something. And she's like, I'm just really glad he stopped having those attacks. And they're like, attacks? What attacks? And basically she tells Chris and Tom that Bernie has these attacks where it looks like he has a fatal heart attack, but really all he needs is his pill and he wakes back up. They're like, his heart rate slows down and it's very, very dramatic, but he gets this pill and he'll be okay. And they're kind of asking her a few more questions about it, and she's like, yeah, and after a while anyways, the effects of the attack kind of wear off and he will wake up. And so y'all, damn if this will sound fake as hell. I mean, you had to be, of course, I'm sure Chris was like so relieved to hear that he's probably alive, but I would be like, we have dragged this man's body across the whole nationwide state of wherever they are in Britain. I don't know what city they're in, and freaking now we find out he's just Sleeping Beauty. Oh my God. So they go to rush to Bernie wherever they have him hidden at this time. And Bernie has now woken up, and we find out that even though it seems like he was passed out and everything, he has heard every single word that Chris and Tom have said, including the fact that at one point Tom mentioned that they should push Bernie down a flight of stairs or kick him to make his accident look more real, since they decided to put him in a stairwell. Y'all, you need to watch the show to get all these details down. But he is freaking pissed. He knows he passed out. He knows that they dragged his body into the office and put him in a trunk, and they did all this stuff with him. So he's really mad, and he's walking up the stairs to the top of a building, and he's screaming about how he's going to sue this organization, and he's obviously not donating the money. Like, you can hear him, he is going off. So tensions are so freaking high right now. And then everyone gets to the top of the roof, because at this point Tom has told these other 3 board members about what's going on, and now they're having this like kumbaya circle moment where they're like, oh my gosh, and Bernie's going off. So let me try and set the stage. They're on the top of a building, right? They're on the top of a building on a roof. Bernie, for some reason, has his dumb ass sitting on the edge of the roof smoking a cigarette. I don't know who does that. I don't, but Bernie that's where he is. I know he's an actor, but even in real life, if I saw someone get on the edge of a building and smoke a cigarette, I'd be like, they really don't care about their life, because they just out here. But anyways, so Bernie is sitting on the edge of the building having a cigarette. On the opposite corner of the building, it's Chris, who's our subject, and then 4 actors, and they're basically saying like, this is the worst case scenario, like, we have his check already, it's gonna clear, think about the kids, we gotta get rid of him, we gotta kill him, we have to push him off the building. And Chris is like, what the fuck, I can't believe they're having this conversation. You can see Chris is like, these people are on 10, 11, 12, and I'm trying to go home. And he's just like, and they're like, well, who's gonna push him off the building? And then they all look at Chris, and I know he said nose goes, but No, he said, he was like, I'm not pushing this man off the building. And they're like, you got to. What about the kids? Everything, you know, all it takes. You got to do whatever it takes. And Chris just stops and says, then I'm going home. He doesn't push Bernie off of the building and he leaves. And we're like, wow, faith in humanity restored? But wait. That's when we find out that Chris wasn't the only one going through the experiment. Derren Brown actually put 3 other participants through this experiment. Then we see like a very quick, I mean, I want to say less than 5-minute synopsis of all of them going through the same activities, watching Bernie die of his heart attack, taking him through all of these steps with Tom, and then getting to the point where they are on the roof and those 3 other individuals push that man off the roof. Now, real life Bernie, he's rigged to like he has like a, I don't know, like a bungee cord or something. So he only really falls a little bit, but I would also be scared of that. Like my ass is getting really pushed off a bridge or off a roof. But anyway, so they go up and they have a camera. So they watch these people push this man off of a building. And everyone thinks this is real. So I just want that to sink in. Derren Brown has convinced these people to commit what they think is murder on TV. They don't know they're on TV, obviously. They don't know this is all fake, but he has recorded them committing what they think is a real, actual murder. And so, kids, we need to take a moment and talk about a concept called ethics. Let's dive into that, okay? All right, I had to put my glasses on because we need to go to an educational institution because we need to talk about ethics, especially ethics in experiments, okay? My glasses are dirty as hell. Give me a second. Okay, I'm gonna read you the definition of ethics from Wikipedia. Ethics, or moral philosophy, is a branch of philosophy that involves systemizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior. Basically, it means determining right and wrong. Right? And ethical, when people say ethical, it means what you're doing is typically right. It errs on the side of right. So social experiments, when you run what Derren Brown is like, I'm gonna run my little social experiment. You cannot just, as an actual psychologist or sociologist or really any person, just conduct whatever kind of experiment you want on people. And that is for a multitude of reasons. You could be a psychotic person to be like, I wonder what happened if I threw a baby in the woods and just see if it ever got raised. You don't have the right to do that. That is infringing on someone's real personal livelihood, and you can't just do shit like that. Sorry, my dog is going off because he's also very passionate about the ethics. It's really important that we understand that when you develop a social experiment, that you, aka the scientist, the researcher, the individual who puts on the experiment, you understand that you have a rule book that you have to follow. You just let me know when you're done, Clarence. I don't get no respect in this house, I swear. You just have to make sure, as someone who is conducting an experiment, as a scientist asking the question, that you are following the rule book of ethical research. And there's 7 principles to ethical research. So let's go through them really quick, okay? And I want us to think about what we just talked about in terms of the show The Push. So Derren Brown says it's a social experiment. I'm telling you there's a rule book. If you want to do a social experiment, you can, but I want us to think about this particular social experiment in terms of the rules. 1, your experiment has to have social and clinical value, meaning that by doing this experiment, you might answer a question that can be valuable to people. For example, you know, we wouldn't need to conduct a whole ass research type activity, social thing to find out if people's favorite store is IKEA or Walmart. That doesn't really have any social value. You know, Walmart and IKEA might want to know, but it doesn't really have anything to do with us. So as a legitimate researcher, you need to be asking a question that might actually be some benefit to society. I would say finding out how susceptible people are to social compliance is a worthy question. Can we, you know, get people to commit murder based on social compliance? That's important, because what if you find out you have some like super psycho who's just really good at doing that? I'm sure there are cults that have many of these same ideas behind it. So I'd say yes. There is a possibility that the push meets our first rule of social and clinical value. It does seem to have value. 2 is scientific validity. So the question that you're asking, are you conducting the research in a way that'll actually answer the question? And that's scientific. So if we go back to our question of, you know, do people prefer, you know, IKEA or Walmart? I'm not gonna sit down and watch what they eat for dinner every night. How does that help me? It doesn't. So you need to make sure that your scientific validity is there. Now, I would say that based on what we saw, there is some argument for scientific validity in the push. You have 4, you know, semi-different, I wouldn't say it was diverse, but there were men and women participants, you know, partaking in this experiment. They all kind of seemed around the same age and whatnot. So the scientific validity isn't like totally spot on, but the question that we ask, can people be manipulated into committing murder? And the scenario that we're in, I do think answers the question. So we'll give it a check mark for social or for scientific validity. Now, number 3 is fair subject selection. That basically, you know, just means that you're gonna pick people that meet the scientific goals of the research, that you're not trying to pick people based on unrelated factors. Like, you know, if I'm trying to find out, you know, if you prefer Walmart or IKEA furniture, I'm not gonna pick people who have only been to private school or something like that. I'm not going to tie those things together. Now, there could be, sorry, my dog moved and I had to pet him. So there could be some, you know, some things that you find out after you find out if people prefer Walmart or IKEA furniture. You might be able to decide or find out scientifically that there are other parts of the person, maybe education background, maybe gender, maybe all these other things might come into play that might indicate to you for future reference, here is the breakdown, and they might be interesting, but you shouldn't be picking people on that basis. Now, I don't really know how they picked the subjects besides what we saw. They, you know, they took a pool of applicants. It seemed like they just did an open call. I really can't say if this checks the check marks yes or no on that. It didn't seem, you know, outside of checking if people were socially compliant, that they specifically iced anyone out. Now, it could be said that because they specifically picked people who they put through social compliance experiments before they did the major experiment, that could be saying something, because you're kind of skewing the numbers already. Because if you just want a general scientific question, you need an open pool of people, and taking multiple people who had participated in the experiment of social compliance where they were standing and sitting, those who did it and those who didn't would be a better basis, kind of like a better pool. What is that called? In a better test round, you know what I'm saying? Ooh. Anyways, but like I said, I can't really say too much about that. This is where we get into it. I'm gonna give the other one, a neutral sign, just like that face that's just kind of like, you know, the emoji with just the straight line. Yeah, I'm gonna give it that one. Okay, favorable risk-benefit ratio. So, first of all, the rule book understands that there are always gonna be risks with clinical research or scientific social research, because we don't really know how certain things are gonna affect people. However, everything should be done to minimize the risk to the applicant or to the participant. And we need to determine that the benefits of doing it outweigh the risks. So the benefits have to be proportionate or outweigh the risks. So the question is, can people be socially complied to committing murder? That's Derren Brown's specific question, right? But I already told you that there have been tons of experiments previously that show that we as people are very susceptible to social compliance. There's an experiment called the Milgram Experiment where a subject was instructed to give an electrical shock to another subject, and they're instructed by an authority figure, and the electric shock gets higher and higher and higher as the other subject in the room gets questions wrong or whatnot. And it was shown that people will deliver an electric shock so high just because they're being told to do it by someone who's in authority and by someone who's in their realm, like their in crowd, despite anything that they hear about the person on the other end of the shock, including that they had a heart disease or whatever it may be. So we have already known for a while that we are socially compliant people. We already know that. So this experiment specifically, I do not think meets the favorable risk and benefit ratio because we don't know the ethical or trauma implications of making someone believe that they murdered someone. And then we also don't know the implications of that potential fake murder being streamed on a television show for everyone in their life to see. We do not know what are the traumatic implications. And like, listen, I am not a doctor of psychology, but I don't think I have to be to make the assumption that if I was manipulated into pushing someone off of a building and potentially killing them, and then that was broadcasted on TV on a Netflix series, that I would be, how do you say, not traumatized. I think I would have a few issues. I don't know, what do you guys think? See, I'm very much like, as humans, we overjudge ourselves. We think that we're higher than average. We think that we run above the general public or population, and that we're not as susceptible to some of these things as we are. Like I said, social compliance doesn't have anything to do with you personally, what you believe. It more so is a subconscious operation of your biology. So I'm giving this a negative. On favorable risk-benefit ratio, it gets a thumbs down. Okay. Independent review. It just says that, you know, you have to have it reviewed by an independent panel just to show that this is ethical and everything. Thumbs down. 2 thumbs down. Okay. We know that didn't happen. Informed consent is another one, meaning that the people who are participating in the experiment, they need to be accurately informed of the purpose of the experiment, the methods, the risks, the benefits, and they need to understand the information and how it relates to their own situation. We know these people went in blind. 2 thumbs down. Look, I'm getting so passionate. And then the final one is respect for potential and enrolled participants. So 1, respecting their privacy and keeping it private. I'm sure they signed, listen, I know that they signed contracts. They decided to be on the show. I know all this. So I'm not saying like these were all like someone needs to call the ethical police. I'm just saying, like, this is the rule book to show that if you're doing a social experiment, here's a way to minimize risk to your participants. And I just want to bring up how few of these have been taken into consideration on the show. So respecting the privacy, they probably signed a waiver, but they are blasted on Netflix, so that's a no for me, dog. Respecting the right to change their mind and to decide the research does not match their interest and to withdraw. They didn't know they were participating in an experiment, so that's a moot point. Informing them of new information that might change the scope or the assessment and the risks, probably a no. Monitoring the welfare and seeing how they react to adverse reactions, unexpected effect, or changes. I don't know about that. I mean, they watched them the whole time, but the whole point was to put them through this high stress situation. And then informing them about what they learned in the research. I would say, yeah, probably that one. But overall, we can see that this Derren Brown social experiment really just did not pass the vibe check, okay? It did not. Now, I guess we're not in school anymore, so I could take my glasses off. But aren't these cute? I'll leave the link below. Z-Lul? Hell yeah. Okay, so anyways, I have some issues with how it was run. I get it. It's reality TV. I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I know some of y'all are like, Brittney, it's not even real. It was scripted. I believe that reality TV is scripted. I'm someone who loves the fantasy of it all and thinking everything's real. So yes, maybe it was fake, but after reviewing Chris's Twitter a little bit, it does seem to be like this was a real, actual show and situation. He even follows Derren Brown on Twitter. And I don't know about y'all, but like if someone made me think I committed murder by pressuring me into doing all this bad shit for a whole night, I feel like we wouldn't be friends. But maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Would you be friends with Derren Brown? And then some of the things I also found disturbing is after after the event, Brown tells all of the participants like, hey, it was fake, ha ha ha, don't you feel good about this? They're all like kind of participating in these weird like after effects. Like there's a photo shoot with Chris and Mannequin Bernie and a couple of other actors hanging out, and that just was like, ugh, I don't know, it just freaked me out. So I just feel like the psychological implications of killing someone or thinking that you kill someone have to be real. I don't know that it's necessarily life altering, but I do feel like being put in this situation and finding out that you potentially murdered someone, those are real things and real issues, and they have to cause some real psychological effects. So Brown was actually asked about this, like, hey, are you worried about the implications of your experiment? And his answer was basically that no, everyone was fine, and they were laughing within 5 minutes after finding out it was fake. I also feel like if that was me, I would be laughing as well with relief, just so thankful that it was fake and that I didn't actually murder someone. I don't know, guys, like we already knew that people were socially compliant. And I think there's some ways that it can be done in a way that's like interesting and like fun to see, like, what would you do with John Quinones? I love him. Those aren't really social compliance, I guess, but it does kind of show you like, would you step in? Would you rock the boat? But I feel like those kinds of things, they bring a call to action without being psychologically dangerous. And like I said, no one has come out and said like the show ruined their life or anything. But I don't know, it just seems like, obviously he did it for views, but it just rubs me the wrong way. It does. How do you guys feel about this? Truly, like, how do you guys feel about it? I want to know, A, if you think you could be socially compliant into doing something like this, and maybe just start with, would you put the vegetarian things in the sausage rolls? Would you do that? I was really thinking about that, and I was like, no, I wouldn't do that. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a bad person, but I also wouldn't catch my ass at that gala anyway, because I don't work nights or weekends. So one of the things that Brown mentions that I just kind of want to wrap this up just to further show like just how much of a problem I have with them. So after he talks about how, you know, within 5 minutes everyone was fine, they were laughing and joking about it, he's like, but it is amazing how malleable people become. We think we've got these values and morals that we can never transgress, but that all goes out the window. So once again, social compliance is not necessarily a representation of your morals or your values. Social compliance really is something that operates on a more subjective level. It doesn't mean that we always comply with things, but the nature around the situation, this man knew what he was doing. He picked people that were already compliant to certain things. I know in some of the interviews he said it didn't matter if everyone pushed off the roof or if no one did, but I think it's very obvious when we're watching the show that he wanted people to get pushed. He wanted them to push this man off the roof, and it happened. And I do feel like we have to understand that this is not a reflection of bad people, and now they are all blasted on the internet as like really thinking that they committed murder. I get it, like it's just a TV show, but I really had a problem with it. I felt so bad for these people, and by the end I just felt gross watching it. The most important thing that I want you guys to remember when it comes to social compliance, I try to make this clear at the end of all my videos, you know, when we're talking about people getting scammed or conned or whatever it is, or socially experimented on, aka manipulated. It's not that these people are gullible or they're dumb or anything like that. There's a lot of really cool psychological explanations and principles that show why we do things. You know, we live in a society, and society has groomed us over the years to do certain things. So I do not think any of these people are bad people because they pushed this man off the roof. I don't necessarily think Chris is a superior person because he didn't. I think that it's just an interesting conversation about how social compliance really doesn't have anything necessarily to do with your values, with your morals, but in a moment of very high intensity, high stress, anybody can be manipulated to do a lot of different things. And just to wrap this whole thing up, okay, I think there was an article from the IndieWire that explains my experience watching this so perfectly. The author says it's like a nightmare version of Candid Camera. It's so true. It's such a nightmare version of Candid Camera. Whew. Anyways, guys, so that is it. That is the Push TV show. What did you guys think? What do you think about the whole show, the concept? Have you seen it? Are you gonna watch it? Do you think it's not that serious? What are your thoughts about how this all went down? Do you think you would push Brittney off the roof? Like I said, I'd quit my job if they asked me to work a gala. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So help me out, share the video, like it. If you do the thumbs up and subscribe, that helps me so much. But feel free to share this with someone out there who maybe hasn't seen my videos before. So thanks, guys. I will talk to you in the next one. Bye. I love myself the glasses. I feel like a bad bitch, but I don't know. Anyways, lifelike as hell. Maybe that. Super lifelike. I'm really trying not to swear. That's why my glasses get so big. They just help me fly away from this earthly plane, bitch. Bye.